Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Marco Mariolini. Marco Mariolini was born on April 13, 1959, in the town of Brescia, Italy. His father worked as a builder, and his mother Mariolini was a housewife. She was obsessed with cleanliness and constantly tidied the house. Everything had to be in its place, and any mess could cause her to have a nervous breakdown. Marco had an older sister who was 2 years older. After Marco was born, his mother felt overwhelmed and struggled to keep the house clean. She suffered from emotional distress and may have suffered from obsessive-compulsive disorder, although she did not recognize her condition and never sought medical help. A month after Marco's birth, he was placed in the care of his paternal grandparents, where he lived for 2 years. His parents eventually brought him back home, believing their situation had improved and that they could handle the challenges of parenting. Once back home, Maria attempted to care for Marco, but he was very active and often caused trouble. He didn't listen to her and frequently threw tantrums. Frustrated, Maria sometimes lost her temper with him. Although Marco's father tried to step in during these conflicts, Maria dismissed his attempts. He is a calm and gentle man who always avoids conflicts with his wife to keep the peace. In the family of Marie, a serious incident occurred. Maria was trying to calm Marco, who was throwing another tantrum for no apparent reason and wouldn't stop. In a moment of frustration, she grabbed him and accidentally threw him out of an open window. Marco fell several floors and miraculously caught on the clotheslines located below, which saved his life. As Marco grew older, he gained weight. He didn't go on diets or actively try to lose weight, but he felt uncomfortable in his larger body. During his teenage years, he began to compare himself to his friends and felt disgusted by any girl who weighed more than he did. Additionally, Marco wanted his girlfriend to have a strong sex drive, equal to his own. However, finding someone who met these criteria was challenging. Most of the girls he met were either too heavy or not up to his standards. Because of this, Marco had a hard time finding a partner until he was 19, when he met Lucia. Marco and Lucia met in 1978. Lucia was short and weighed 100 pounds, and Marco fell in love with her petite figure and sought a close relationship. However, when Lucia first undressed in front of Marco, he was disappointed in her figure. Despite this, Marco continued to date her because he appreciated her calm, modest, and composed demeanor. Meanwhile, he continued to search for his ideal partner. A few months after starting their relationship, Marco joined the army and was stationed in Pisa, Italy. Believing that he would quickly find new love elsewhere, he stopped contacting Lucia. After a few months, when Lucia started dating someone new, Marco realized that he didn't want to lose her. He contacted her again and even proposed. Marco admitted that he decided to marry Lucia because he thought he could change her to fit his preferences. They got married in 1980, and soon after, Marco focused on controlling Lucia's weight. He believed that 45 kilograms was too heavy for a woman, so Lucia agreed to go on a diet. Marco restricted her food intake and weighed her regularly. When she lost weight, he praised her and expressed his love. However, if she gained weight, he became extremely harsh. After a few months, Lucia reached a dangerously low weight of 33 kilograms, which made Marco happy. Then, unexpectedly, Lucia became pregnant despite her low weight. Marco accepted this and allowed her to eat freely, he realizing that she shouldn't be restricted during her pregnancy. As Lucia's belly began to grow, Marco became unhappy with it. Their intimacy began to falter. During this time, Marco often fantasized about women who were very thin, like skeletons. He often fantasized about being able to see the woman's spine. As Lucia entered her final months of pregnancy, Marco began dating other women, especially those who were not only thin but also anorexic. However, He soon realized that these women were not right for him. Because they have unpleasant personalities and, most importantly, lack interest in intimacy. They make their own choices about food and eating, which is contrary to Marco's desire to have complete control over his diet. In 1981, Lucia gave birth to a daughter, and a year later, their family welcomed their second child. After giving birth, Lucia gained a significant amount of weight, causing Marco to increasingly distance himself from her. He found her post-pregnancy body unattractive. He eventually decided to divorce her, wanting to ensure that their children would stay with their mother. The divorce was amicable. Marco then began looking for a new partner, a journey that lasted nearly 10 years. During this time, he opened his own antique shop. In 1994, dating through newspaper ads began to become popular. Marco, 35, posted an ad describing who he was looking for. A very thin woman, not anorexic, aged 18 to 50. He received responses from 21 women and invited them on a date. Among them, he was most interested in Monica, who was from Sicily and 5 years younger than him. She was 1.72 meters tall and weighed 45 kilograms. She was friendly and outgoing. Curious about Marco's unusual ad, she decided to respond. Monica and Marco began to see each other regularly. While Monica viewed their relationship as casual, Marco wanted something more serious. He tried to convince her to move in with him. After a while, Monica decided to move in with Marco. In the same year, he started facing challenges at work. He had fallen into debt, and his antique shop was losing money. To help him, Monica lent him 76 million lira, the amount for which she sold the house. This was a large sum, considering that the average salary in Italy at that time was around 2 million lira. Although Marco proposed to Monica, she rejected him. At first, they lived as a normal couple, but after a while, Marco began to interfere with her diet. He said that a 1.72 m tall girl weighing only 33 kilograms was beautiful. But he set her goal weight at 38 kilograms. Monica agreed, Marco still secretly hoping she would reach 33 kilograms. It is unclear why he set that number. Marco limited Monica's meals to once a day, usually consisting of a plate of green salad or vegetables. He monitored the food in their house, marking the cereal jars and making sure Monica did not eat anything without his knowledge. He weighed her several times the day and became angry if he noticed her gaining a significant amount of weight. If her weight increased, he would force her to vomit and sometimes resort to physical violence. On weekends, the couple often eats out. Marco enjoys a hearty meal, ordering an appetizer, a second course, and a dessert. Monica, on the other hand, limits herself to a vegetable salad without dressing or unsweetened green tea. This is her routine, even on holidays. After a few months of dieting, she reached her goal weight, but soon after, her weight started to climb to 40 kilograms. Monica kept her diet a secret from everyone, including her parents and friends. As she began to lose weight, her relatives noticed and began to ask about her health. To avoid their questions, she changed the subject and eventually isolated herself, cutting off all contact with her friends and ignoring their calls. Over time, her health deteriorated. She felt weak, had no motivation to get out of bed, and her period stopped. Monica was constantly hungry and obsessed with food. She resorted to stealing, sneaking small dry crackers that Marco never counted. One day, she even ate a whole raw onion. When the Marco discovered that food was missing, he punished Monica severely. He forced her to have sex, physically abused her, and made her sleep on the floor. After 2 years of enduring this treatment, Monica felt completely drained. She finally made the decision to leave the house. When she told Marco that she wanted to end their relationship and return to her parents, he responded by saying that she would have to kill him for that to happen. He then threatened her with brutal revenge if she attempted to escape. In the spring of 1996, Marco and Monica went to a restaurant. Marco ordered a plate of spaghetti, while Monica chose a green salad and asked for no oil or seasoning. While they were waiting for their food, Marco said he needed to go to the bathroom. After Marco left the table, Monica suddenly took his plate of spaghetti and started eating it ravenously. When Marco returned from the restroom, he became extremely angry at Monica's actions. He snatched the plate from her hands and demanded that she calm down. In response, Monica rushed into the restaurant's kitchen, where the cooks and waitstaff were busy. She grabbed a plate of food and began eating with her hands. Marco found her there and brought her back to their table. He shouted at her and then slapped her hard across the face. The restaurant staff and other customers were puzzled and merely watched the chaotic scene in silence. After returning home, Marco decided to punish Monica. He stripped her and told her to sleep on the floor while he went to the bedroom to sleep comfortably in his warm bed. That night, Monica picked up a heavy hammer and attacked Marco while he was sleeping, hitting him on the head before fleeing the house. Hours later, Marco woke up with a severe headache and saw blood near him. Realizing that Monica was gone, he ran to his neighbor, who called an ambulance. Marco was taken to the hospital. Fortunately, he was not seriously injured and recovered fairly quickly. The police arrested Monica and took her into custody. During the interrogation, Marco defended Monica, acknowledging that he had been cruel to her. Marco said that there had been some misunderstandings in their relationship and that they would work things out. At trial, Monica was found guilty and sentenced to 2 years of house arrest. She then moved to her parents' home in Domodossola, a city in northern Italy, 200 kilometers away from Marco's home. During her house arrest, Monica was still able to use a phone. Although she never contacted Marco, he called her regularly. At first, he seemed concerned, showing concern for her well-being. However, over time, his calls became too frequent. During one conversation, Marco confessed that he could not live without her and wanted to see her again. Monica rejected his advances, but he persisted. In 1997, Marco wrote and published his first book, The Anorexia Hunter. The original cover photo that Marco chose featured a healthy, chubby man holding a skinny woman. He based the characters on the American cartoon Popeye the Sailor. However, due to copyright issues, Marco was unable to use the image, so the publisher released the book with a different cover. Marco has publicly stated that the book is an autobiography that reflects his real life. He expressed that he felt deprived of love and care since he was a child. He has a complicated relationship with his mother. Although he hates her, he sometimes feels affection for her. Marco describes his father as a weak and indecisive man. Marco wrote about his relationship with Lucia. In the book, he called Monica Barbara. He discussed the theme of control and power over girls. According to the story, the author killed Barbara. During the book's launch, Marco publicly declared himself a monster who needed to be stopped. An editorial writer who was present at the event found Marco's tone very offensive. After reading the book, the editorial writer went to the police to express his concerns. However, the police dismissed his report, believing that Barbara's murder was completely fictional. At the time, Marco had no criminal record, making it impossible to charge him based solely on the content of his book. When Marco's autobiography was released, Monica was still under house arrest for another year. Marco sent her a signed copy of his book with the message, "Love and Hate." He continued to call her, and Monica recorded their conversations on a dictaphone. Concerned about his mental health, she urged Marco to see a doctor. During his therapy sessions, Marco opened up about his obsessive thoughts and troubling fantasies, revealing the truth about his life. He was admitted to a psychiatric hospital for several weeks, but after his treatment, he returned home feeling disillusioned with medicine, realizing that the medication had not helped him. In 1998, Monica, who was 29 years old, was finally released from house arrest and allowed to travel around the country. Marco continued to contact her, pleading for a meeting. Although Monica initially refused, she realized that he wouldn't give up easily. Eventually, she agreed to one last meeting with him but specified her conditions. It had to be during the day in a crowded place. On July 14, 1998, Monica met Marco at a small beach in Verbania on the shores of Lake Maggiore, where young couples were swimming and sunbathing. They talked for a while, but then Marco began to pressure her to return to their previous relationship. Monica stood firm in her refusal, and in response, Marco started to threaten her. Monica and Marco were sitting on the shore when she suddenly stood up and ran away. Marco quickly caught up with her and knocked her to the ground. She screamed for help, but he covered her mouth with his hand. Although there were many witnesses, no one intervened. Marco then took out a knife and stabbed Monica 22 times, killing her on the spot. The witnesses called the police, but by the time the ambulance and police arrived, Marco had already swum out to sea. Officers using a lifeboat on the beach caught Marco. During questioning, Marco admitted to his crime, claiming that he had no intention of killing Monica. He said that he came to the beach hoping to convince her to return to the relationship. If she refused, he planned to kidnap her using his car parked nearby. Police found ropes, chains, knives, locks, and duct tape, suggesting a premeditated plan that ultimately failed. Marco denied wanting to run away after the murder. He mentioned that he tried to end his life but failed. During the investigation, comic book drawings were discovered in his home. In these drawings, he depicted himself as a large ball and the girl as a thin line. His artwork expressed mockery towards women. During his conversation with the journalist, Marco showed no remorse for his crime, stating that he felt he had no other option and did what he had to do. However, Marco acknowledged that he posed a danger to society. Marco Mariolini was found to be sane and guilty of murder, he receiving a 30-year prison sentence. While incarcerated, there was a time when he refused to eat, took laxatives, and lost weight down to 44 kilograms, but later he regained it. He was a problematic inmate, starting a fire in his cell and causing minor trouble for the guards. As a result, he was transferred to different prisons multiple times. Marco wrote letters claiming he should not be released because he would kill again, but he later denied this and then wrote similar letters once more. Italian director Matteo Rone was inspired by Marco's horror stories to create the film First Love. Released in 2004. Although it did not receive major awards, it drew attention to Marco's past. In 2021, there was an article written about Marco's early release and it was revealed that he had been transferred to a mental hospital. In late 2002, journalists approached Marco for an interview. During the interview, he expressed a desire to forget his past experiences with women. The journalists noticed that he seemed confused, often unable to answer their questions. His mental state may have been affected by the effects of medication. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Sonda Diameter. In December 2018, a group of college students brought their 20-year-old friend Sonda to the emergency room in critical condition. He was unresponsive, extremely pale, and had a body temperature of 27 degrees Celsius. This was unusual because Sonda was a healthy and active young man with no previous health problems. The medical team ran several tests, which revealed that Sonda had hypernatremia, a life-threatening condition caused by too much sodium in the body. Normally, an adult consumes about 2 grams of sodium per day, but Sonda's body contains 160 grams, equivalent to about 2 months' worth of sodium. The medical team asked Sonda's friends what had happened, but they simply shrugged, avoided eye contact and pretended not to know about Sonda's condition. It was clear that something was wrong. Despite the efforts of medical professionals to save him, Sonda, 20, died of multiple organ failure. The autopsy revealed the initial findings. The pathologist examined Sonda's stomach to understand the cause of the seemingly healthy college student's sudden death. To the doctor's surprise and shock, he discovered that he had not eaten or drank any food or water for the past 2 days. Instead, his stomach contained foreign objects such as goldfish from an aquarium, the head of a rat, and the entire head of an eel. This indicated that Sonda had suffered horrific experiences before his death. The case attracted a lot of media attention, quickly becoming an international topic of discussion. Talks broke out about universities covering up shocking student misconduct and the lack of responsibility of the children of wealthy families. A student association called Reusgum was closely monitored. Reusgum, founded more than 70 years ago, is symbolized by a Flemish lion. The secret society has about 30 active male members, mostly law, engineering, and business students from prestigious families. Reusgum is one of the most prestigious and sought-after groups at the prestigious Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium, with only 2 or 3 new members admitted each year. The secret society is surrounded by rumors, which makes it all the more mysterious and mysterious. It is like an elite group of students with a lot of power and influence on campus. The Reusgum Student Secret Society has begun planning its annual initiation ceremony for new members. The ceremony includes a unique and daring menu, starting with appetizers such as roasted grasshoppers and cockroaches, followed by a main course of rats and raw fish. Dessert is a mix of coffee and a banned substance. A disturbing photo of a Reusgum fraternity's initiation ceremony has gone viral. The photo shows the group's leaders dressed in worn clothes, while 4 new members are kneeling. 2 of the new members are pictured with a gun pointed at their heads, a pistol, and a rifle. The photo raises many questions. What other types of rituals does this secretive group conduct? What exactly are the events that take place inside the fraternity? Considering the backgrounds of many of its members, parents, politicians, lawyers, prominent doctors, and business leaders, what would they do to protect their children if something truly happened seriously? Sonda never had any aspirations of joining the Reusgum fraternity. Instead, he was a young man born in Belgium to a Senegalese father who sought asylum in the country a few years before he was born. As an immigrant, Sonda's father worked hard to ensure his 2 sons could live a good life. He knew that because of the color of his skin, his children would have to work twice as hard to gain the same respect and career opportunities as native Belgians. Sonda's father, Dia, worked long hours at a factory, spent many nights mastering the local language, and slept or stayed up all night to help his son study. His only desire was for his sons to succeed in life. From a young age, Sonda understood the importance of working towards his goals. He realized that success will not come easily and required perseverance and hard work. As he grew up, Sonda had a close friend named Ferry, who lived nearby. The 2 shared interests such as cycling, comics, and dreams of going to college, finding a good job, saving money, and eventually moving to Japan. They even promised to be lifelong friends and visit Japan together one day. However, fate had other plans for Sonda, and he will never have the chance to visit his dreamland. As a teenager, Sonda had many friends. He had an innate ability to excel in various activities, such as solving complex math problems and playing soccer, which surprised his friends. Despite his special talents, Sonda was loved by everyone for his easygoing and charming personality. He was sociable and easy to get along with, which made it easy for him to make friends. After completing high school, Sonda made his family proud by becoming the first person to attend a prestigious university, the University of Leuven. His father was extremely happy with this achievement, which exceeded his dreams. Although the university was close to home, Sonda chose to live in a dormitory. He pursued civil engineering and was determined to get a master's degree in the field. Sonda's maturity and ambition drove him to make his father proud. His ultimate goal was to graduate, secure a high-paying job, and allow his father to retire, repaying the sacrifices he had made for his children's future. By 2018, Sonda was in his third year of a 5-year program and was already thinking about his career after graduation. In order to achieve his goal of securing a high-paying job to support his family and pay the bills, he stayed away from parties and focused on finding a job. Realizing that his skin color could be a hindrance in a predominantly European industry, and with his high academic achievements, communication skills, and hard work, he realized that building relationships was important. This realization leads him to consider joining the Ryuzgam, a group that has important connections and is essential to his career. Joining the Ryuzgam seems to be a strategic decision. Many of its members come from prominent families, which makes Sonda's decision to apply a surprise to his friends, except for his brother, who understands the potential career advantages of the organization. However, his childhood friend Ferry has reservations about these groups and even tries to dissuade Sonda from joining, seeing it as a potentially dangerous move. If Ferry had known the tragic outcome that would befall Sonda, he would never have stopped trying to stop him. Sonda's decision to join Ryuzgam was not an impulsive one, he considered it carefully. With 2 years left until the end of his studies in 2018, he weighed the pros and cons before making his final decision. Sonda was then one of 10 students who successfully passed Ryuzgam's rigorous selection process. Of these 10, only 3, including Sonda, advanced to the final selection stage. In the first stage, Ryuzgam members screen out candidates who do not match their interests, personalities, or communication styles. Once the final 3 are narrowed down, the real challenge begins. We'll spend 2 months rigorously evaluating the 3 selected, culminating in a 2 to 3 day selection ceremony. During this intense evaluation process, the recruits are subjected to constant, relentless humiliation and complete dependence on the members of the Ryuzgam society. Sonda learns about the brutal initiation rituals of the society, but he is willing to go through with it for the promise of a better future. Like the other 2 candidates, Sonda understands that the process will be difficult and push them to their limits. However, no one anticipates risking their lives in such situations. Sonda's school friend, who belongs to another society, has his own views on the Ryuzgam initiation activities. He sees it as a challenging test of endurance, brotherhood, and self-control. Although he admits that it is difficult, he believes that it is a necessary experience and will ultimately be rewarding. However, Sonda has a very horrifying experience. He is forced to drink too much alcohol. What was even more disturbing was that he was forced to drink the urine of existing members of the society. Sonda and the other newcomers were constantly insulted. Sonda had the worst of it. He was ridiculed for the color of his skin, which made his experience even more unpleasant. In October 2018, the society held a large event at the Student Union building. New members, including Sonda, were forced to kneel and take turns drinking large amounts of strong alcohol. Despite this, the newcomers were still forced to clean up the place. They stumbled across the floor, trying to clean up their own and others' vomit. The experience was traumatic and humiliating for Sonda and the other new members. That night, the 3 new members were ordered to clean up, but the Ryuzgam brothers had other plans. They decide that only the dark-skinned man, Sonda, will be cleaned, citing historical precedent where dark-skinned men served white men. Sonda feels powerless to protest, but he is determined to overcome it. Knowing that this situation will eventually end, Sonda worked hard to be accepted into the society, but at the age of 20, he was still quite naive. Despite the pain he had gone through, Sonda continued to attend the society's meetings. Sonda loved his father, who had sacrificed a lot for his education, and Sonda was determined to make him proud. Sonda hoped that the humiliation would end once he passed the final hurdle. The Ryuzgam Society, which has a history of over 70 years, had only 2 members of African descent. In 2015, a dark-skinned student was inducted, and Sonda was about to become the second person to undergo the final initiation ceremony, also known as baptism. On December 4, 2018, the initiation process for new members began at 4 p.m. In the first challenge, 3 candidates, including Sonda, wear long, flowing white robes and walk into town with bouquets of flowers. Their goal is to sell as many flowers as possible by the end of the challenge. The person who sells the fewest flowers is punished. These punishments include drinking yogurt and other unpleasant substances. Sonda ends up in last place, selling 30 fewer roses than his competitors. This leads to his punishment, where he is forced to drink a significant amount of alcohol, affecting his ability to speak. The initiation moves into the second phase. The new members, now kneeling, are asked simple questions. However, by 7 p.m., the members of the association have become less tolerant of Sonda's inability to answer these questions clearly. Unsurprisingly, he is defeated by the other competitors and faces further punishments. His punishment was to drink a bottle and a half of gin. His body, not used to the large amount of alcohol, began to react painfully. His stomach was filled with the alcohol he had drunk. Sonda's health quickly deteriorated, leaving him unable to walk, talk, or move, as he faced severe dehydration and passed out repeatedly. Surprisingly, this incident took place in a public place, right on the sidewalk in front of a cafe in the city square. However, no passers-by intervened or called the police for help. At 9 p.m., the third challenge called Endure the Night began. The student council took the new recruits to their dormitory, where the 18 student council brothers continued to torture them relentlessly. This time, the participants were required to drink as much beer as possible. By the end of the ordeal, all 3 participants were unconscious, although they were still breathing. However, this did not stop the continued abuse. According to the order's custom, when someone faints, they are urinated on by the order's members. A video was recorded of these actions at 11:40 p.m., but the perpetrators attempted to delete the footage. When the first day of the event ended, the new members were taken to their quarters and violently thrown onto their beds. The water supply was cut off as a prank. The initiates' belongings were vandalized with ketchup and chocolate, and they were locked up. This meant that if any of them woke up, they would not have access to water to relieve their dehydration, having consumed a potentially fatal amount of alcohol. This was just the beginning of a week-long initiation ceremony at one of the country's most esteemed universities. But the most traumatic experiences were yet to come. The next day, December 5, 2018, at around 10:30 a.m., the members of the order were ready to begin the final stage of the initiation ceremony. They woke up the 3 new members, loaded them into a car, and drove out of the city to a remote village about an hour away. One of the members of the order had a small, isolated house surrounded by dense forests, ideal for keeping their activities secret. Along the way, they stopped several times to purchase the necessary items for the ceremony. They visited a pet store to buy items such as aquarium fish, eels, live rodents, as well as bird and dog food from a pet store. They then stopped at a supermarket to buy various products, including fish sauce. However, this sauce is high in sodium and is not usually consumed in large quantities. They also bought duck eggs, sardines, clams, shrimp paste, mussels, and other seafood products. During their stop, a professor approached the group of students and noticed that one of the students was in need of help. She expressed her concerns to the society members and even suggested calling the police. However, the society members, quickly convincing her that the student was simply drunk and in shock, stated that the initiation ceremony was over and that they would help him recover by giving him a cold shower. This seemed to allay the professor's concerns. The group then went to a cabin in the woods. The police have reconstructed the details of what happened next through the recovered deleted footage and some evidence. The truth about the events that took place in that forest is still unclear. For several hours, the three beginners had to dig a large hole, which they were then placed in. Other members of the student union surrounded the hole. They filled it with cold water and live eels. In Belgium, the average temperature in December is around +3 to +7 degrees Celsius. When the newcomers start shivering from the cold, the members of the society urinate on them from above, a strange act that is said to warm them. At this point, Sando was dehydrated and still drunk from the night before. Even if he wanted to get up and leave, he couldn't. Normally, if a new initiate wanted to stop, he would just ring a bell placed at the edge of the pit, but this time the bell had been removed, leaving Sanda with no way to indicate that he wanted to stop. His physical condition, unable to stand or speak, left him helpless. The three new members, exhausted and drunk, were forced to sit in ice water and endure the urination and defecation of the members of the order. They were then forced to bite the heads of rats and eels that lived in the water and drink fish oil. After 6 hours of enduring these brutal conditions, Sanda's body began to weaken and he passed out. Finally, he was taken out of the water, dressed in dry clothes, and placed next to the fire. As he curled up on the ground for 2 hours, the initiation ritual continued around him. As Sanda's health deteriorated, instead of seeking immediate medical help, the fraternity members spent their time taking pictures and recording Sanda's painful images and sounds. Sanda's body was now reacting violently to the excessive sodium intake, leading to high blood pressure and a nosebleed. Sanda then passed out. Time passed. It wasn't until 8:57 p.m. that one of the fraternity members decided to call an ambulance. The students then drove Sanda to the hospital, but instead of placing him safely in the back seat, they deliberately placed him in the trunk to avoid dirtying the car's interior. Upon arriving at the hospital, the association members deliberately withheld important information from the medical team regarding Sanda's diet and recent alcohol consumption. After dropping him off and handing him over to the medical team, the group of students left immediately, saying that the ceremony would resume as soon as Sanda was discharged from the hospital. A decision that did not take much care of Sanda's health. While medical professionals were investigating the cause of his condition, Sanda's internal organs began to fail. He was eventually transferred to Antwerp University Hospital for more advanced care and better facilities. There, he fell into a coma, and Sanda's heart stopped, and the 20-year-old tragically passed away. The cause of death was determined to be high levels of sodium in his body due to his excessive consumption of fish sauce during the ritual. This prompted the hospital to notify the police, who immediately opened an investigation into the circumstances surrounding Sanda's death. As news of Sanda's death spread, 2 other ritual participants were rushed to the hospital at 10:40 p.m. after their conditions worsened. Their parents also rushed to the hospital upon learning of their child's serious condition. Meanwhile, the members of the cult attempted to cover their tracks by destroying all evidence. They filled in a trench used in the ritual, cleaned up the room where they used ketchup and chocolate, turned on the water supply, and deleted incriminating messages, photos, and videos from their phones. However, when the police arrived, they were still able to recover the deleted data from the cult members' mobile devices. The investigation into Sanda's death has been difficult, despite the considerable amount of evidence that has been collected. The members involved belonged to powerful families whose parents quickly sought legal representation. Although the evidence linking the 18 members of the student body to Sanda's death grew stronger, the investigation dragged on and was repeatedly thwarted by powerful parents. All 18 students deleted their social media profiles and limited their communication, speaking only through their lawyers. Following Sonda's tragic death, the Ryuzgam student body was eventually dissolved, and the university disciplined the students involved, requiring them to complete 30 hours of community service. Despite the severity of the incident, none of the students were expelled. The group of 18 completed their studies without any significant consequences. A group of teachers protested the lenient punishment, writing an open letter in support of harsher punishments for the group, but no additional measures were taken against the students. The legal process of the case was completed in July 2020. However, the lawyers for the Ryuzgam members tried to reframe the case as a tragic accident caused by Sonda's poor health. It was not until May 26, 2023, that the court finally issued its verdict. The court found 18 Ryuzgam students guilty of manslaughter and mistreatment. Each member was fined €400, ordered to perform community service, and ordered to compensate the victim's family about €30,000. The court decided not to reveal the identities of the students responsible in order to protect their future. The relatively light sentences caused widespread outrage, leading to protests in several cities. However, while these protests took place, the outcome remained the same. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Jasmine Richardson. The Richardson family was widely admired for their friendly and hospitable personalities, which made everyone feel at home. Deborah, Mark, and their children, Tyler and Jasmine, lived in a cozy home. Their home is frequented by friends, and the family atmosphere is built on the principles of love and respect. However, things took a turn when Jasmine, their 12-year-old daughter, entered puberty. From a calm and obedient girl, she grew into a confident but also impulsive young woman. This new personality led to frequent conflicts with her parents, and her academic performance started to decline. Jasmine's interests changed in a big way. She switched from listening to modern pop music to heavy rock. In addition, her fashion style is no longer the same as before. Gone were the bright colors and cheerful clothing. Instead, she opted for a darker, more somber style that was often provocative. It was clear that Jasmine was trying to attract the attention of boys, and she began to accentuate the curves of her body. Her interaction with friends noticeably decreased as she began spending more time alone in her room, often with the door closed, glued to her computer screen. After the internet became available at home, her interests shifted to exploring Gothic themes, reading dark poetry, learning about criminal psychology, and studying human anatomy. She also became fascinated with criminal psychology and the Wiccan religion, referring to herself as a witch. She connected with like-minded individuals through websites focused on similar interests, forming a community of friends who shared her passions. Her social media page featured the greeting, "Welcome to my tragic world." Jasmine's behavior, initially thought to be a sign of puberty, but late became more concerning as she began to distance herself from her family. She created a fictional online persona, gave herself a different name, age, and began seeking relationships with people much older than her. Her parents tried their best to support her during this difficult period, suggesting that they spend time together by participating in common activities. However, Jasmine found these suggestions uninteresting. Her relationship with her younger brother deteriorated as she started speaking to him less frequently, viewing him as an annoyance. In stark contrast, she spends hours talking to strangers on social media, building other relationships, to make up for her lackluster relationships with family and friends. Deborah and Mark were aware that their daughter's new hobbies were likely a temporary phase of her youth. As a result, they were patient and allowed her to explore her interests. When Jasmine asked to attend a punk rock concert, her parents agreed. If only they had known the consequences that would follow this outing. In early 2006, Jasmine attended a local concert by a youth band that shared her interests. She also knew that Jeremy Steinke, a boy who had caught her attention for months, would be there. They had met online through a website for vampire enthusiasts and occasionally communicated with each other. Jeremy created an online persona as a 30-year-old werewolf who craved blood. To support this claim, he wore a vial of blood around his neck, but the origin of the fluid was unknown. Despite his ambiguity, he seems to believe he is unique, a quality Jasmine finds appealing and interesting. Jeremy and Jasmine connection deepened after meeting at a concert. Jeremy, however, was 23 years old, and the duo knew her parents would not approve of their relationship due to their significant age difference. As a result, they decided to keep their romance a secret. Complications in Jeremy's life were made worse by problems he had experienced earlier. He struggled financially and resided in a trailer with his mother and sister. His relationship with his mother was strained, largely because of her heavy drinking. This often led to violent arguments with some of her hot-tempered partners, who often abused Jeremy in drunken fits. By the age of 13, Jeremy was struggling academically and had mental health issues due to a troubled home life. He became so overwhelmed that he tried to hang himself, but fortunately, someone intervened in time. He was later diagnosed with depression and hyperactivity. Due to the relentless bullying he faced at school, Jeremy decided to stop attending. As Jeremy navigated the dark period of his life, he developed a passion for the concept of live immortally and began exploring online forums, where like-minded people shared thoughts and ideas. His online profile was filled with morbid topics, including self-harm, pain, and violence. Unbeknownst to their families, Jeremy had started a dating relationship with Jasmine. Their friends were aware of the relationship, but they found it strange due to the large age gap. Everything remained a secret until Jasmine's parents, Deborah and Mark, discovered her excessive internet use and decided to monitor her online activity. What they found alarmed them. Jasmine was in contact with strangers, including Jeremy. He is someone with a suspicious online identity. His nickname, Soul Eater, and interests in dark themes raised concerns, leading Jasmine's parents to intervene and restrict her access to the computer. They were shocked to learn that Jasmine was in a dating relationship with Jeremy, making it clear to them that this relationship was not acceptable under any circumstances. Deborah and Mark took their daughter Jasmine to see a psychologist, hoping she would get the help she needed to escape her toxic relationship. The counseling sessions greatly improved their parent-child relationship, and Jasmine appeared to be returning to a normal life, claiming the past was behind her. She regained access to her computer. Unfortunately, this turned out to be a wrong decision and proved fatal for Jasmine's family. On the evening of Saturday, April 22, 2006, as the family prepared for bed, Deborah heard a noise in the basement and went to investigate. She initially thought the noise might be rats but discovered a person wearing a ski mask instead. The masked man stood opposite Deborah, and her first reaction was to scream. The stranger attempted to silence her by covering her mouth but was unsuccessful, prompting Deborah to scream even louder. The assailant then stabbed Deborah in the chest with a knife, twice. Mark, hearing his wife's desperate cries for help, rushed down to the basement. He was met with a horrific scene. His wife lay in a pool of blood, with the attacker standing nearby. Mark quickly responded by attacking the intruder. However, he was stabbed in the stomach and sustained additional stab wounds. As Mark's pain began to subside and he was losing consciousness, he quietly asked the attacker why he did that. The attacker coldly replied that it was because Mark's daughter had wanted it that way. Upstairs, Tyler was left alone and scared as the attacker approached. Tyler was still in his pajamas and was paralyzed with fear. The footsteps grew louder and the bedroom door opened. Just a few days before the murder, Jasmine was happy since her parents had forgiven her, allowing her to reconnect with them. Mobile phones weren't widely used at that time, so Jasmine used the computer to communicate with the outside world. As soon as she regained internet access, she immediately contacted Jeremy. She told Jeremy, "Everyone will think you and I are crazy, but there's one way we can be together, if my parents disappear." However, what Jasmine didn't reveal to her parents was that she was secretly forming a plan to kill them while she was receiving therapy sessions. She shared this plan with Jeremy. He found the idea appealing, but he stressed that everything needed to be carefully, meticulously planned and that attention to detail was required. Jasmine realized that as long as her parents were alive, she would never be able to be with Jeremy. During this time, Jasmine's friends noticed that she often complained about her parents, expressing her annoyance towards them. What they don't realize is that Jasmine's resentment eventually leads her to want to end her parents' lives. Despite her frequent comments about killing her parents, but her friends considered it just a funny joke. Garrett crossed the street to his friend Tyler's house on Saturday, April 22nd, in 2006. He was excited to play, as the weather was pleasant. When he arrived at the Tyler's house, he noticed that the blinds were still closed, which seemed unusual. Even more unusual was that no one came to the door when he knocked. This surprised Garrett, as the Mark Best car was parked in the driveway. Curious and hoping to find someone, Garrett peeked through the living room window but didn't see anyone. He then walked to the back of the house, towards the basement area where he often played with Tyler. As he looked through the window, he saw something strange on the floor, what appeared to be two people lying in a pool of blood. This disturbing discovery prompted Garrett to inform his mother. Garrett's mother seemed suspicious at first but decided to check on Tyler's family. They approached the house together, and Garrett pointed to the window he had looked through earlier. The woman peeked inside and was met with a horrific sight, immediately prompting her to call emergency services. "There's been an incident at the Jasmine's house," she reported. The police swiftly arrived at the scene and forcibly entered the house through the front door. They then proceeded to the basement. Due to the severity of their injuries and the large amount of blood, the police initially struggled to identify the bodies. However, despite the difficulties, they were eventually able to confirm that the victims were Mark and Deborah, and tragically, they had lost their lives. The crime scene was exceptionally horrific, with blood splatters covering the floor, walls, and ceiling. Later, during a thorough search of the house, the police found a young child in the upstairs bedroom. The boy was lying in bed, surrounded by toys also splattered with blood, and had visible knife wounds. A young boy's throat had been severely cut. As police searched the house, they realized that the Mark and Deborah's eldest daughter, Jasmine, was missing. This raised concerns for her safety. Initial investigations suggested that the attack occurred in the basement and the child's room, with the rest of the house appearing untouched. The condition of the boy's body indicated that the crime likely took place the previous night. It seemed that the perpetrator had broken into the house and attacked the boy and his parents. But what had happened to Jasmine, and where was she? The police developed several theories to explain her disappearance. One possibility was that she had managed to escape and was somewhere safe. Another possibility was that the perpetrator had taken her and was harming her. However, as the investigation continued, no clear answers emerged. Detectives turned to the media for assistance in locating the missing girl. Jasmine, hoping she would reach out or someone would come forward with valuable information. The investigation into the crime continued. Investigators interviewed relatives and friends of Mark's family and their colleagues to gather more detailed information about their lives. They sought to determine if the family had any enemies who could be capable of such a heinous act. However, upon further investigation, they learned that Mark's family was well loved and had no enemies. They were a loving family with a strong marriage and positive relationships with their children, except for one exception, their eldest daughter, Jasmine, who had been causing trouble lately. As a result, the media announcements shifted focus. The investigation now sought to locate the eldest daughter, Jasmine, a very suspicious person. The girl may have information about the case or might have been involved in it. Under Canadian law, which prohibits publishing the names of minors, so news outlets started referring to Jasmine Richardson as JR because she was underage at the time. After news of her relationship with Jeremy spread, this couple has become a wanted person by the police. The police initially focused on their friends and acquaintances. However, this line of investigation was ultimately unsuccessful, and the investigation reached a dead end. Police investigation revealed some new information. A few hours after the crime, Jasmine and Jeremy were seen at a restaurant and a party hosted by a friend. A friend noticed that Jasmine was fine, showing no signs of distress or trauma, and she continued to socialize, drink, and have fun. When friends asked how they managed to escape from her parents, Jasmine laughed and replied in a light-hearted manner. Jeremy and she took care of them. However, Jeremy's tone took a darker turn when he nodded in agreement, and then he added that he had cut them up like fish, implying a violent act had occurred. Jasmine's laughter downplayed the severity of the situation, making it seem less significant. The party guests burst out laughing, thinking that the remark was a sick joke. However, they did not realize that it was actually true. The guests' amusement was also verified by a comedian who was present. The police found a detailed plan in Jasmine's school locker, revealing her intentions to harm her family members with the help of her boyfriend. The photos of the suspects were widely circulated, and it is likely that they will be caught soon, as someone is expected to come forward with information about their whereabouts. Eventually, police received a tip and found Jasmine and Jeremy in Leader, Saskatchewan, about 130 kilometers from Medicine Hat. They were found sleeping in a pickup truck and were taken into custody without a struggle. Jasmine and her boyfriend, Jeremy, were questioned individually, with Jasmine being interviewed first. She told investigators that she and Jeremy were deeply in love and that he reciprocated her feelings. However, their relationship was impacted by two main issues: a large age gap and disparate social status. Jasmine claimed that her parents would never have approved of their relationship. According to Jasmine, Jeremy ended the lives of her parents so that they could be together. When detectives inquired about her involvement in the crime, Jasmine denied being present at the time it occurred and stated she had no prior knowledge of the event. After she found out what had happened, she decided to run away with him, because her love for Jeremy was so great. Detectives needed to identify the mastermind behind the plot. To get the suspect to cooperate, investigators came up with a clever tactic. They placed an undercover informant in Jeremy's cell, who successfully extracted information from him that contradicted Jasmine's claims. According to Jeremy, the plan to kill Jasmine's parents was actually she's idea. Jeremy was initially hesitant about going along with the plan. However, after realizing his own feelings for Jasmine, he agreed to it. Additionally, Jasmine's parents confiscating her computer as punishment also influenced his decision. Jeremy confessed to the informant. He took care of she parents, Deborah and Mark, while Jasmine took care of her younger brother, Tyler. Jeremy reveals that she desperately begged him to spare Tyler and come to her, and he was happy to get revenge on them all. Following Jeremy's confession, investigators questioned Jasmine using the recorded conversation between them and he as evidence, which left her no choice but to reveal every detail of the crime. She admitted that she stabbed her younger brother, Tyler, stating she didn't want to leave him behind as an orphan. In the following investigation, Jasmine and Jeremy voluntarily shared their social media profiles and passwords. By doing this, investigators were able to look at their private conversations and found thousands of messages that backed up Jeremy's previous claims. It became clear that Jasmine was indeed the mastermind behind the plan. Further investigation also uncovered a disturbing dynamic between Jasmine and Jeremy. Jeremy wrote that Jasmine was the only person who accepted and supported his unusual tastes, helping to alleviate the feelings of isolation he experienced due to not fitting in with societal norms. Fearing that he would lose her, he agreed to help carry out the horrific plan. One of Jeremy's messages contained a chilling passage, exposing his desire for violence. Jeremy wrote that he wanted revenge on Jasmine's parents and was determined to hold them accountable. His intention was to harm them and eventually make them disappear. Jeremy showed his affection for Jasmine in her time of need. However, his friends revealed a disturbing fact. Hours before the incident, Jeremy and his girlfriend had watched the 1994 film Natural Born Killers. This movie tells the story of a couple who brutally murder 9 people. Jeremy's friends stated that after watching the film, he expressed a desire to reenact a similar scenario with his girlfriend, calling it the best love story of all time. Based on the evidence collected, including witness testimony and the suspect's confessions, Jasmine but Jeremy, detectives were able to reconstruct incidents surrounding the crime. This led to the suspects being charged with 3 homicide counts. Jeremy was intoxicated before the incident. Jasmine allowed him into the house and led him to the basement, where he assaulted Deborah, Jasmine's mother. Deborah received 12 stab wounds, with the most severe wound penetrating 12 centimeters into her chest and damaging her heart, which ultimately caused her death. Jeremy then brutally attacked Mark, Jasmine's father, inflicting 24 wounds, 9 of which were on his back. Mark also bled to death on the basement floor. Meanwhile, upstairs Jasmine stabbed her younger brother Tyler 5 times. Then, Jeremy joined her. He coldly slit the boy's throat. Jeremy returned home to clean the blood off himself, while Jasmine took a taxi to a restaurant where they had agreed to meet. Once reunited, they discussed the incident of the night and then went to a party. Jeremy's friend, Casey Lancaster, helped them dispose of the evidence and evade authorities by fleeing to Saskatchewan. The brutality and gruesomeness of their actions are difficult to put into words. Jeremy and Jasmine committed their heinous crimes with ease and without emotion. What is even more disturbing is that during interrogation and detention, neither of them expressed any regret or remorse for their actions. While they were detained, Jeremy and Jasmine wrote letters to each other, referring to themselves as legendary and immortal. In one of these letters, Jeremy submitted a marriage proposal to Jasmine, and she happily accepted. Jasmine and Jeremy's intense relationship fell apart suddenly. As trial began, they blamed each other for their actions. Jasmine was the first to face trial in June 2007. She entered a not guilty plea, claiming that she was in a trance-like state at the time, which left her unable to intervene or stop Jeremy from killing her family. Jasmine also asserted that she only injured her younger brother, and Jeremy was the one who caused her younger brother's death. She made a statement that her conversations with Jeremy about killing her parents were just hypothetical discussions. But Jeremy took them seriously and pressured her into making them a reality. Jasmine received a 10 years prison sentence for 3 counts of homicide. However, due to Canadian laws regarding juvenile offenders, this was the maximum sentence she could receive as she was under 14 years old at the time of the crime. The primary goal of the sentence was to focus on healing and restoring the girl's mental well-being, rather than punishing her. In a 10-prison sentence, including 4 years in a psychiatric facility. During her stay, doctors diagnosed her with 2 conditions: conduct disorder and oppositional defiant disorder. Jasmine showed genuine remorse for her actions in the years leading up to her release, which was noted by medical professionals during her community supervision. After serving her full sentence, Jasmine was released from prison in 2016 and has since been living in Canada under a new, protected identity. Her return to society has been met with mixed opinions, with some people supporting her right to a second chance, while others believe her punishment should have been more severe. The community in Medicine Hat has made it clear they do not want her to return. It remains to be seen whether Jasmine has truly changed and grown during her time in detention. Jeremy's trial began in 2008. He claimed that he had not initially intended to harm his girlfriend's parents, Deborah and Mark. However, after being discovered in a basement, he felt forced to attack. Jeremy denied harming Tyler and instead suggested that Jasmine was the one responsible. His defense argued that Jasmine had deliberately manipulated him into committing the crime, as she sought to escape her parents' strict control. Friends of Jeremy stated that he came to them before the crime. He confided in them his fear of losing Jasmine, to the point where he was willing to do anything to prevent it. Jeremy's lawyers asked the court to reduce the charges to manslaughter, suggesting that he was under the influence of substances at the time of the crime. When questioned by the prosecution about his motives, Jeremy gave an inconsistent response. He stated that when someone finds their soulmate, they will do whatever it takes to keep them. Throughout the trial, Jeremy remained largely unemotional, but broke down in tears when his mother, Jacqueline May, testified in his defense. Jacqueline felt guilty about the role she played in his upbringing, during which he was frequently physically and emotionally abused by her partners. In the end, Jeremy was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree homicide and received 3 life sentences. He will be eligible for parole in 25 years, starting in 2033. Casey Lancaster's charges related to being an accomplice in a crime have been dismissed in a Medicine Hat court. However, she was found guilty of obstructing justice. As a result, she received a 1-year sentence of house arrest and was prohibited from using drugs and alcohol during her custody. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Peter Tobin. Peter Britton Tobin was born on August 27, 1946, in Johnstone, Scotland. He was the youngest of 8 children born to Marjorie and Daniel Tobin. From an early age, Peter displayed an impulsive personality, prompting his parents to send him to boarding school in 1953 when he was only 7 years old. However, this did not work, and he was sent to a reformatory. After completing his time there, he moved to Brighton, England. There, Peter began a relationship with Margaret Mount, a young typist who was attracted to his personality. They married in August 1969, but soon, Peter's ruthless, controlling, and abusive personality manifested itself. Not only that, Peter also became involved in criminal activities. A year later, he was convicted and imprisoned in England for theft and counterfeiting. Margaret decided to divorce him in 1973. Peter then married Sylvia Jeffrey, a 30-year-old local nurse, who was also attracted to his charm. That year, they had their first son, Ian, and a year later, a daughter, Claire, who unfortunately died shortly after birth. Sylvia was devastated by the loss of her child, became a victim of Peter's abuse, and decided to leave in 1976, taking their young son with her. Years later, when he was in his 40s, Peter was ready for a new romantic relationship. This time, he chose Kathy Wilson, a sensitive, naive, and impressionable 16-year-old girl. This made it easy for Peter to start a relationship with Kathy. The two moved in together, and soon after, their son, Daniel, was born. They married in 1989 and moved to Scotland. This was a difficult time for Kathy. Her husband was controlling, preventing her from going out and becoming increasingly violent. Eventually, Kathy bravely decided to run away with her son in the late 1990s. Kathy's departure brought out the worst in Peter. After Kathy left, Peter met a gentle girl named Vicky Hamilton. Vicky was born in Scotland in 1976 and was the second child of Michael and Janet Hamilton. She had 3 siblings, Sharon, Lee, and Lindsay. However, arguments arose between Peter and Vicky and they quickly divorced. Vicky, Lee, and Lindsay lived with their mother and moved to South London. Sharon still lives in Bath, but this did not prevent Vicky and Sheeran from maintaining the same close relationship as before. The evening of February 10th was cold and snowy. On a hangout with Sheeran, Vicky checked her fare and went over the bus route with Sheeran. They hugged goodbye. At the bus stop, while eating a bag of chips, Vicky met Peter. He pulled Vicky into his car, raped her, and then killed her. When Vicky failed to visit her mother's house, and there was no news of her, her family began to search for her. They reported her disappearance to the police. As the police investigated the case, Vicky's image became prominent across Scotland, and the search for her became one of the largest in the country's history. The runaway theory was reinforced on February 21, 1991, when Vicky's purse was found near the main bus station in Edinburgh. It was, in fact, a false clue planted by Peter to throw investigators off track. The attempt was successful, sending the investigation off track. Detectives spent 2 months searching London unsuccessfully. It was then revealed that Vicky's mother had died. Over the next 10 years, Vicky's family and townspeople continued to pursue the case, but with more than 7,000 names on file, nearly 4,000 statements taken, some 500 documents and 380 potential physical evidence, all to no avail. The case was eventually dropped. The next young woman to have Peter's misfortune was Dinah McNichol, an Essex native with a brother and 3 sisters. Her father was a jazz musician and her mother had died in a car accident many years earlier. At 18, Dinah was a kind, cheerful girl and a great friend. She had just graduated from high school and had high hopes for the future. She was torn between taking a year off to travel or going to college, but she was undecided. On the first weekend of August 1991, Dinah attended a music festival in Hampshire. There, she met a boy named David Tremlett. They quickly fell in love. On Sunday, August 4th, they spent the night together in a tent. The next day, Dinah helped him take down the tent and they agreed to each hitchhike home. As they were both tired, Peter showed up and offered to give them a ride. David got out of the car first, and Dinah saved Peter's number before parting ways. Alone with the strange driver, the girl was about to face a real nightmare. On Monday, August 5, 1991, he did the same to her as he had done to Vicky. Dinah's scarf became a crime tool. After the crime, Peter withdrew money from Dinah's account at ATMs in Hampshire and Sussex. When Dinah's family saw the withdrawals from her account, they immediately suspected something was wrong. They knew she had carefully saved every penny and planned to use it for travel or education. As the days passed, the family lived in fear and uncertainty, which was the worst thing. Although no one said it, everyone believed that something terrible had happened. If Dinah were still alive, she would have returned home or called to explain her absence. As for Peter, he left Margate without saying goodbye or explaining anything. In 1993, he settled in Hampshire, renting a flat in Lake Park, saying he wanted to be closer to his son. On August 4, 1993, 2 14-year-old girls went to visit Dinah but did not see her. So they asked the neighbors if anyone had seen Dinah, which led to them knocking on Peter's door. Peter invited the 2 girls into his house, ostensibly to wait for Dinah. They saw his friendly 5-year-old son and agreed without suspicion. While the child was asleep, Peter began to torment the 2 girls. He threatened them with a knife and forced them to drink alcohol, then beat and raped them. One of the girls was seriously injured. Fortunately, the child woke up in time and saved them from the same terrible fate as the 2 previous victims. Peter wanted to hide the truth from his son, so he decided to leave the apartment with the child. Before leaving at around 2 a.m., he turned on the gas stove to complete his monstrous plan. However, the 2 girls were lucky to wake up and escape. They went to the police and reported everything that had happened. After that, Peter returned the child to his mother and joined a sect called the Jesus Fellowship under a false name. But the media published his photo, provided by the police, and his face became widely known. With the help of BBC Crime Watch, Peter was finally arrested after 40 days on the run in Brighton. Peter appeared in court on May 18, 1994 and pleaded guilty to sexual assault and indecent assault on 2 young girls. As a result, he was sentenced to 14 years in prison. However, Peter was released in 2014 at the age of 58 without serving the full sentence. After his release, Peter returned to Scotland with the aim of hiding in the same area to avoid being identified as a sex offender. He evaded capture for a long time until 2006. During this time, Peter used a false name and posed as a homeless person. He sought refuge at St. Patrick's Cathedral in Glasgow. Under the name Peter McLaughlin, Peter approached a charity couple from the church group, Dennis and Katie Curran. Katie still felt uneasy about Peter despite his frail appearance. On the other hand, having been raised Catholic, Peter felt comfortable in the church. He begged there, which helped him gain sympathy from the parishioners. This gave Peter the freedom to move around unnoticed and provided him with an ideal hiding place. Here, Peter met Angelica Kluck, a 23-year-old girl from Poland. She came to Scotland in the summer of 2006 to work and pay for her language lessons. Angelica was living in the rectory of St. Patrick's Church and doing cleaning work. Peter took an immediate liking to Angelica and convinced her to help him with various tasks. On Sunday, September 24, 2006, Angelica helped Peter paint a shed. Some parishioners saw them together. But unexpectedly, Peter attacked Angelica at the back of the chapel. Leica Brown, 47, and her husband, Andrew, 46, were at home when they heard a woman screaming through an open window. Leica described the scream as a short, loud sound, like someone being forcibly restrained. The scream made her nervous and she got up from her chair, but when she got to the window, she couldn't see anything. Hours passed and the parishioners noticed that Angelica was no longer there. That was when Dennis and Katie quickly reported the unusual disappearance to the police. The police immediately began investigating and interviewed every member of the community. During these interviews, it was discovered that the last person anyone saw with Angelica was Peter, albeit under the guise of a homeless. He eventually became the prime suspect and the police came to question him, but found no evidence. The investigation continued. Peter knew that it was only a matter of time before they found the body and traced it back to him, so he fled to London. By this time, Detective David Swindle had joined the investigation and began to suspect that this might not just be a disappearance. Everything they found, as well as the testimonies they gathered, made him think that Angelica was unlikely to be found alive. Finally, on September 29, 2006, authorities discovered the body in the chapel. This news shocked British society, especially because of the location chosen by the perpetrator to hide the body. Looking at the injuries sustained by the girl, Detective David suspected that the perpetrator was not acting for the first time. However, there was more news to come. The DNA found at the crime scene and on the victim's body matched the data in the United Kingdom's National Criminal Intelligence Database. That's when they learned that the man they were looking for was Peter Tobin, whose fingerprints were also found at the crime scene. The first step for the authorities was to publish his photograph in the media. His image was also sent nationwide for distribution and the Scottish police contacted the Metropolitan Police, initiating a search throughout the United Kingdom. Meanwhile, Peter, who was in London, tried to hide in a place where he believed he wouldn't be sought. He went to a hospital, pretending to have heart problems, claiming to have chest pain and weakness on the left side of his body. He identified himself as a plumber and called himself James Kelly. He was examined by Dr. Nick Lasso, who conducted several tests. However, Something in his demeanor and behavior made the doctor uncomfortable. Initially, he avoided eye contact, which was unusual for a patient. Then, when the tests didn't reveal any physical reasons for the pain he claimed to be experiencing, the doctor became suspicious. His suspicions were confirmed by a nurse who recognized Peter from a photograph circulating in the media. As a result, both the nurse and the doctor contacted the police. This phone call changed the entire dynamic of the investigation. On September 30th, police officer Alan Murray was dispatched to the hospital in London. Peter was taken to a room and Alan went to talk to him. He was immediately arrested. Although initially, he was charged only with a violation of the sex offender registry, this thing allowed the officers to buy time to prepare a criminal case against him. Evidence gathered by the police team led by Detective David led to Peter's trial for the crimes committed against Angelica in late March 2007. Despite all the evidence against him, Peter denied committing any violent acts against the young woman. However, in an attempt to shift blame for the rape, he claimed that they engaged in consensual sexual activity. Peter also denied providing false information to the police and hospital staff. After 6 weeks of legal proceedings, his lies and manipulations proved futile as he was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 21 years. Detective David and his team suspected that there were more mysteries to Peter's story. During the trial, the detectives further investigated Peter's life, gathered more evidence and built a profile with the cooperation of various law enforcement agencies. To avoid affecting the case involving Angelica, they chose to carry out their work discreetly and carefully. The joint police investigation was called Anagram. Investigators identified links between the disappearances and locations that Peter had visited. The investigation revealed 2 exact links, one in Bathgate and one in Margate. A search was then carried out at Peter's old house on the coast and they found a knife with traces of DNA hidden in the attic. However, no other findings were made at the location. Investigators then visited the house where he lived in Margate and established that he was a dangerous serial offender. A search of the house revealed a secret grave in the garden that he had created for his son. Investigators dug up a sand pit in the garden and found the body of a woman. Further searches at the same location uncovered another body. A woman's handbag was found at the crime scene and was collected for DNA analysis. As well as identifying the 2 victims, the handbag was also analyzed. Although the handbag clearly contained DNA, there was no match in the National DNA Database. However, on June 1, 2007, investigators found a DNA match to Peter's fingerprints. This was a vital lead and they decided to pursue this line of investigation. On November 14, 2007, the authorities confirmed that one of the bodies was that of Vicky Hamilton, who had gone missing at the age of 15. Her family had waited 16 years for any information about her. They later identified the second body as that of 18-year-old Dinah McNichol, who was hitchhiking home after attending a concert. On September 1, 2008, the Crown Prosecution Service charged Peter with Vicky's murder, leading to his trial. When Vicky's father, Michael, saw Peter, he was restrained by the police, as at that point he just wanted Peter to know that he was there to defend his daughter's honor and remember her. Peter faced sentencing after a month of trial on December 2, 2008, when he was convicted of Vicky's murder and sentenced to life in prison. A year later, in December 2009, Dinah's trial took place. On December 16, due to the defense's failure to provide evidence to exonerate his client, the jury found Peter guilty of Dinah's murder. As a result, he was given an additional life sentence. 5 months before his trial, a report on November 22, 2007, stated that Peter Tobin had been attacked by fellow inmates in prison, but he only suffered minor injuries. During the investigation, Peter Tobin also confessed to a total of 11 murders. Peter died in hospital on October 8, 2022.